Welcome to this video on the relationship between Christianity and the environment. Climate change and environmental science are just two critical issues that have captured the attention of people worldwide. The increasing global temperature, loss of biodiversity, and depletion of natural resources are just a few examples of the challenges that we face today. In this video, we'll be exploring the relationship between Christianity and environmentalism, how the Green Christianity movement is promoting environmentally sustainable practices, and how Christianity's teachings in general can provide a strong ethical framework for addressing environmental challenges. We will be examining concepts like stewardship, justice, and the value of all life and how they relate to the environment. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the world of Green Christianity and its role in promoting environmental sustainability. First off, Genesis says that God gave humans dominion over the earth, with the responsibility to subdue it and its creatures. However, with this power of dominion also comes responsibility to take care of the earth and be its stewards. In the book of Isaiah, a curse is brought upon the earth as a result of humanity's mistreatment. The climate crisis is inextricably linked to capitalism and economics. In order to study how Christianity as a whole is responding to climate change, we must first look at the formative economic principles and how they viewed human responsibility towards the earth. Philosopher John Locke defined the natural world as the commons. Locke believed that while all people had a right to utilize the resources of the natural world, individuals should be allowed to claim certain parts of the commons for their own. This idea of private property tied into his belief in collecting wealth through labor and social class being a result of one's work. Locke used God as a justification for his views in his Two Treatises of Government, saying God gave the world to men in common, but since he gave it to them for their benefit and the greatest conveniences of life they were capable to draw from it, it cannot be supposed he meant it should always remain common and uncultivated. Thus, the biblical idea of dominion was used as a rationale for industrialization, just as the biblical idea of environmental responsibility will later be used as an argument for the combating of climate change. In thinking about climate change through a Christian lens, it's useful to look back to Christian responses to industrialization, a major player in the shape of the modern world, but also what led to devastating consequences for both the environment and climate. While Christianity was used to support and oppose industrialization, a famous Catholic critic of industrialization was Pope Leo XIII. Being born in 1810 and passing away in 1903, he experienced the peak of the Industrial Revolution. In his book Rerum Novarum, translating to Of New Things, Pope Leo XIII criticized the Industrial Revolution for leading to abundant wealth among a very small number and destitution among the masses. While modern-day Catholics are relatively divided on climate change, as another unforeseen consequence of the Industrial Revolution, can be tied to Pope Leo XIII's statement on class, as people in poorer countries tend to disproportionately suffer its most damaging effects. Green Christianity movement not only draws on the tenet of loving the earth as a reason that climate change is an urgent problem to be addressed, but can also use the Christian idea of love thy neighbor as an argument for Green Christianity. Speaking of which, let's move on to some examples of how the teachings of Christianity can provide a stable framework for the advocacy of climate justice. Green Christianity is a movement within Christianity that emphasizes the responsibility of Christians to care for the natural world and promotes environmental sustainability. The movement argues that the plundering of the earth is a violation of God's creation and that the current ecological destruction is the result of this disrespect. Lynn White, a historian, argued that the roots of the ecological crisis can be traced back to the book of Genesis in the Bible. In a 1967 essay entitled The Historical Roots of Our Ecological Crisis, White suggested that the anthropocentric worldview presented in the Bible, particularly in the story of Adam and Eve, has led to a belief that humans have dominion over the earth and can exploit its resources without regard for the consequences. For example, in the beginning of the Adam and Eve story, God says, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." This is before the moment of the original sin, and God clearly delegates mastery over the earth to human beings. When the sin happens and the fruit is eaten, the earth becomes a much more hostile environment. God says to Adam and Eve, "Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Both thorns and thistles it shall grow for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread." Furthermore, Green Christianity believes that the dominion mandate given to humans in the story of Adam and Eve has been abused through greedy overconsumption of resources. which is seen as idolatry. While activities like fracking, fishing, and farming are legal under biblical law, exploiting the earth of all its natural resources is not. The belief that loving the earth is a way to love God is a central tenet of green Christianity. It acknowledges the temporary nature of the earth, but still respects the mandate given to humans to be stewards of the earth. By living sustainably and respecting the environment, green Christianity believes that humans can fulfill this mandate and show their love for God and all his creations. White's argument also provoked significant debate, with some criticizing his interpretation of the Bible and others applauding his call for a re-evaluation of humanity's relationship with the environment. While the idea that Genesis is responsible for the ecological crisis is a controversial one, it has similarly contributed to the ongoing dialogue about humanity's role in the natural world and the need for sustainable practices. The controversy surrounding environmental interpretations of Genesis is represented in the Christian community through their large range of views on climate change. According to a study conducted by the Pew Center in 2022, 61% of devout Christians are climate skeptics, believing the earth is sacred, but doubting that humans are the ones causing environmental changes. This point of view can be easily tied to the idea of dominion, and the data from this survey supports the link between climate skepticism and dominionism. 71% of practicing Christians believe in dominionism, in comparison to only 41% of non-religious Christians. Thus, while the green Christianity movement is growing, it still reflects disputed ground, as the Bible itself does not necessarily provide a clear interpretation for the climate crisis. As demonstrated by Lynn White, scholars and theologians alike have been thinking about the environment through a Christian lens for many years. One of the most influential religious leaders in the environmental movement is Reverend Benjamin Chavis, Jr. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Reverend Chavis helped lead protests opposing a landfill full of toxic chemicals being placed in Warren County, North Carolina. 62% of Warren County's population at the time was black, and it was through these protests that Reverend Chavis coined the now widely known term environmental racism. A few years later, Reverend Chavis became the executive director for the United Church of Christ Commission for Racial Justice. In 1991, Chavis and the UCC contributed to the organization of the first National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit, during which the 17 Principles of Environmental Justice were written. Another Christian climate scholar, who similarly to the aforementioned Reverend Chavis, focuses on the impact of climate change on marginalized communities, is Cynthia Mo Labeda. Mo Labeda serves as a theological consultant for the Bishop of the American Evangelical Lutheran Church and teaches Christian ethics at the Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary and Church Divinity School. On the environmental side, she is one of the founding members of Seattle University's Center for Environmental Justice and Sustainability and founded the PLTS Center for Climate Justice and Faith. She wrote an article for the Journal of the Society of Christian Ethics entitled Climate Change as Climate Debt, Forging a Just Future. In this article, she presents climate change as a problem caused predominantly by the wealthy, which negatively impacts low-income communities the most. She also acknowledges the racial aspect of climate injustice and how people of color are often disproportionately affected by environmental issues, tying into Reverend Chavis's work. Furthermore, Mo Labeda uses a Christian ethics as a foundation for compassionate climate justice. Ultimately, it's clear that while Christians are by no means unified on the issue of climate change, Christianity does provide a framework for climate justice, and many theologians have been building upon that framework through the green Christianity movement. Climate change is a complex problem which is stemmed in part from industrialization and capitalism. Biblical text provides a range of interpretations of these topics, which further complicates the issue of climate justice through the lens of Christianity. With that being said, Christianity, as one of the world's largest religions with over 2 billion followers worldwide, has an incredible influence on other people's beliefs and values. By embracing environmental climate advocacy, Christianity has the potential to promote sustainable practices on a large scale. Principles such as stewardship and environmental responsibility supply a solid ground for a Christian climate movement, which has only been growing in recent years. Climate change is a global issue that affects everyone, regardless of their religion or beliefs. It is therefore important that everyone works together to address this issue, and Christians can make a significant contribution by promoting sustainable practices and advocating for environmental policies. Together, maybe we can finally make a dent in this universal issue of climate change and start to finally save the Earth. Thanks for watching, and we hope you enjoyed this video.